So something insane is currently going on. As we can see from the newest cinematic as well as the new book, the Nerubians are building something gigantic and sinister. We got a gigantic egg inside their city that is supposed to hatch something, but even more interestingly, they're building up a massive stitched up abomination of a tentacle inside of a laboratory, no doubt from the old god blood that is inside the zone. What makes this even more mind-blowing is that this tentacle is literally the same shape as the dagger Xal'atath was in. Now, according to the lore, a fifth old god exists and his remains might be inside the zone. Xal'atath is currently just a random void elf, but she traveled to the times of Galakrond to get his proto undead essence. Is she literally building up a body for herself? Think about it, stitching up the remains of the destroyed old gods, the ones we had killed over the years, powering it up with the blood they're harvesting, and ultimately reviving it all with the essence of Galakrond. They will bring on the biggest monstrosity Azeroth had ever seen. So what is going on? If you're looking for the most interesting way to actually get into programming, well, look no further than boot.dev. The entire system is designed like an RPG with XP levels, achievements, quests, but it's not a gimmick. You're going to actually develop real skills that will translate into a full-on career where you can work from home if you really dig into it. The entire goal of boot.dev is to get you writing a ton of code immediately to get hands-on experience. Now, the team understands that not everyone can pay for a membership right now, therefore all the content is free to read and watch in guest mode. The paid membership unlocks the interactivity of the program. However, they're so confident you will love it that they have a free demo of every course and interactive features as well as a 30-day no questions asked refund policy. So click link in the description, use my code Doronsmovies and get 25% off your first payment. That's first month or first year, depending on the payment subscription you choose. So start gaming and programming today. So we got some really interesting information, not just from the official cinematic, but also from the collector's edition book that may be shedding light on what is going on with that fifth old god, what Xal'atath is planning, and also that mural you have definitely seen by this point. Most importantly, this is definitely something you have seen, but a detail that you might not have paid attention to is there are two shots from the newest cinematic that are incredibly suspicious. One is showing the Nerubians hoisting a gigantic egg on top of their city that appears to be some type of a big project, and the other is showing the Nerubians building a gigantic tentacle. However, the word building here is a little bit of an underwhelming word, as it looks like they're literally stitching this thing together with magic and old god blood. And if I told you this was the Scourge building up an abomination in Northrend, it would 100% be believable. Now, to top this all off, we got actual official artwork from the collector's edition book for The War Within, confirming that this is in fact one gigantic tentacle, and the 3D preview of this looks even more gruesome than it does in the actual cinematic. So what exactly is going on with this? Why are the Nerubians building a gigantic tentacle, and what could possibly be inside that egg? So we got a bunch of clues that we can tie together with this to make out their plans. One is the entire fifth old god ordeal. I've repeated this a bit more than a million times by now, you're probably aware of it, but the most important recent hint we should focus on is that they could confirm in the latest Chronicle book volume 4 that 5 old gods exist. So if people thought the fifth old god was a dead end from Dragonfight, they have just double down on this. Some people are saying this fifth old god is Gahun, but the document states old gods were imprisoned, 5 were imprisoned, Gahun was created later down the line when the other were imprisoned, and the Titan Order was already established. Other people are saying that Xal'atath is an old god, but you can see the Illyria dialogue from the beta itself that outright states that Xal'atath is not an old god and that she's something else, something much more ancient. So this now leads us to the fabled mural we had discovered in azj'kahet that I've also covered a million times, but seeing that this is in azj'kahet, they're building this thing in azj'kahet, it could potentially be related. The old god figure that has Nerubians entering the mouth akin to being sacrificed has the most potential to be an image from the past of Azeroth, very likely showing this fifth old god, as this guy looks nothing like the other old gods. I mean, sure, he is super similar in regards to the eyes to Y'Shaarj, super similar to N'Zoth with the tentacles, but really, he looks like a combination of both of these guys. However, seeing that some big big project is going on, you can see from this new artwork in the cinematic that it could be an outright hint on what is going to happen. It makes even more sense as there is a void crystal on the right that has rays of the sun, which kind of shows you what could happen once Beledar gets fully transformed into the void. This tentacle could literally be a part of this new thing they're building, and that leads us to the biggest hint we currently have, and that is the so-called Old God blood, as they call it, the black blood of the old gods. That is a massive lore point in the war within. This is not really a hidden thing, this is not really a speculation. Blizzard outright told us that Xal'atath is here to gather this old god blood, and check this out. She brought the Dark Heart artifact here, which might all play a part of this crazy ritual that is going on below the ground. Now, you can check out my video on the recent Old God Whispers that we got from this really strange fish octopus thing that was found in the beta. However, most interestingly, it tells us that the old gods are gone, but their blood remains and remembers, and that it tastes of the wars of the past and the wars that are to come. This aligns perfectly with Blizzard telling us that the old gods are gone, but their legacy isn't. Now, you can check out a bunch of my previous videos on this 5th old god and what might have happened to him in the past. Initially, when I saw these images, I was thinking they're just using the blood and rebuilding the long gone 5th mysterious old god that would complete the awakening, and this might still be true. However, then we got this incredibly interesting hint. Put the image of the tentacle the nerubians are building alongside the dagger that Xal'atath was in, and you will see that it is literally the exact same shape, especially the tip of it, which doesn't really align with the other old gods and their tentacles, but it perfectly aligns with the dagger. So the real theory now is that the servants of Xal'atath are literally building a massive old god type body for her and stitching it from the remains of the other old gods. Let me just say that not only does this seem very likely, but it might turn out to be incredibly interesting if this really is the case. So the most important thing to keep in mind right off the bat is that Xal'atath is not a void elf. I know they're constantly showing her like that in the marketing material, and it has probably gotten people to associate Xal'atath with that body, but it's literally just the most random possible body she got. Other hints from the beta had shown us that she's a tool of the Void Lords, something very ancient, more ancient than the old gods, and someone that possibly already destroyed the planet in the past. Her essence was in the dagger, and she got this body from the NPC that was around during the questline, but she's something much more sinister. I mean, just like Anuzal presented himself as a fish, but he's definitely something much more sinister than just a simple fish. Now, we got some really interesting hints currently going on that make this even more likely. Combine the questline that ended and started the dragon fight, and it will make so much more sense. First of all, she allied with Iridikron in order to harness his hatred for the Titans, and Iridikron helped her get the artifact Deathwing had built, the first ever dragon soul, the proto dragon soul, the so-called Dark Heart. From the looks of it, it seems like a very powerful storage unit that can contain terrible powers, like terrible powers akin to the old god powers. Then she traveled to the times of Galakrond. Not only did she get his proto-undead essence, but also the essence of Galakrond, which is the old god that was responsible for his undeath. Then, in the ending questline for Dragonfight, she for some reason traveled to Ulduar, and she was around Ulduar, where once again there is the essence of the old gods. Now, she is taunting us with this artifact in the actual cinematic, and we can literally see her servants and nerubians building tentacles and giant eggs that literally seem to be a part of her new body that she might use to finish the awakening of Azeroth. Blizzard is obviously hinting at something, as this tentacle seems to be inside of a laboratory. I don't know about you, but this doesn't really look like an old god tentacle. This looks incredibly undead-like. Like, this looks like something the Scourge would build. Not just stitched together like the undead abominations, but also very pale and quite similar in tone to Galakrond. So let's make sense of this. Old God blood is apparently ever present in khaz'algar, this is confirmed, and this old God blood is also apparently alive. It could be the blood of the 5th old god that was lost in the ancient history of Azeroth. Obviously the roots of Elune are here, the first ever world tree around this place, which we will soon discover. So are the nerubians literally just gathering the body parts for this? They're using old God blood. I'm not sure what they're building these tentacles out of, but ultimately, once they get the body parts, they're going to use the undead essence of Galakrond Galakrond in order to revive Xal'atath, and I feel like she might literally hatch the essence out of the gigantic egg that is currently in the zone. It is very important to state that Galakrond was created by Galakrond, and as far as we know, this was the first ever case of undeath on Azeroth. Most interestingly, this was undeath specifically created by the old gods, so a void type undeath. Remember, with the new lore, undeath is not just from the Shadowlands, not just from the Lich King. I mean, we have seen light undead, so this would be an old god version of undeath. Now, one of the theories was that the 5th old god might have been defeated by one of their own, as the old gods constantly war between themselves because they're super chaotic beings. It's also possible that the Titans might have destroyed him when they invaded, just like Yasharaj, which then they tried to mend by planting a world tree over him, but they failed, so they ripped it out and created the entire mess that is khaz'algar. A 5th zone called Rootlands that is in between Hellfall and azj'kahet is currently hidden and will be added later. If the world tree was really planted here upon the old god corpse, this is exactly what they may be doing. Like, there's literally an old god corpse here. We might literally have remains of that 5th old god that they're now gathering and stitching together. They're harvesting the blood, and then they're using the essence of the other old gods from the Dark Heart to reanimate the entire thing. Ultimately, Xal'atath would switch her body from the Void Elf to this one, and we are going to be dealing with like a revived old god abomination built from all the other destroyed body parts. Like the ultimate stitched up old god powered by Xal'atath that is going to bring on Midnight in the Void Invasion. Thank you for watching. Check out the 5th league zone called Rootlands by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on ancient training from the second channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.